We're continuing to look at relationships, and particularly relationships under stress. And honestly, there seems to be a lot of it about our bleak midwinter, not necessarily feeling 100%. Things are a little bit financially rough. And hey, maybe it's just me, but when things are stressed on the home front, it adds a whole different layer of pressure. Somebody who is well qualified to talk about this because he's still married, John Cowan. John, kia ora, good morning.
Good morning, and I can also talk a little bit about stress because I've just hung 2 loads of washing out on the washing line and It started to rain. You know, what a fantastic rain-making device the Hills Hoist clothesline is.
It is fantastic.
Anyway.
And the other good thing about this, particularly living in Tamaki Makaurau, Auckland, is you never need to use the extra rinse cycle on your washing machine because the weather will do that for you, right?
That's right. It's fairly reliably unreliable.
Yeah.
But anyhow, I did want to talk about stress and relationships. I'm a lazy counselor in that I go for things that I know are going to deliver results fairly quickly. And one of them is the question, when I'm confronted by a couple, they might be fighting, they might be chilly to each other, they might be having all sorts of problems of being unhappy and whatever. And a simple tool to get into what's really going on is very often, what's the major stress in your life?
Mm-hmm.
And it might be that they're having arguments about all sorts of things, but in actual fact, the real problem is stress. It might be a dying parent. It might be credit card debt. It might be the kids getting in trouble at school. And even though the problem seems to be over there, the issues are popping up over here. In the middle of the relationship. And so that's a very good tool to look at whatever's making you unhappy in your relationship. What's the biggest stress in my life? And sometimes the thing that's stressing your partner isn't stressing you.
Yeah.
That's one of the things. The stress is very subjective. For instance, you might be thinking, yes, the level of debt that we have in our, at the moment is perfectly manageable. We've got good capital to back it up and everything like that. Whereas your partner is just stressed out the fact that you've just gone and bought something for $3,000 on the credit card.
There's nothing more stressful, I think, John, than you being stressed out about something and somebody else being very calm about it. That like doubles your stress, doesn't it? And makes them a very annoying person that they're not as worried and stressed out as you are.
That's right. I mean, it only really takes one person in the relationship to be stressed for it to put a wobble onto the relationship.
Yeah.
And so as well as asking yourself, what's stressing me? It's very often, what's stressing my partner? And you might not think that their source of stress is particularly logical, but that's not going to solve the problem. If you're thinking, I can solve this problem by solving my wife, or solving, that ain't gonna work.
Don't worry, calm down are fighting words around about this point as well.
That's right. You may be able to get through it by carefully explaining why your approach to finances or whatever is logical, but I think there's probably better ways. By the way, other things that might be not stressing you but stressing your partner is flirting. Flirting is, some people just think it's something, they just turn on the charm and everything like this, and you might just think of it as being, harmless banter.
Yeah.
Where in actual fact, it might be really stressing your partner. So just be aware that your approach to things might be different.
Yeah.
So what's really tricky, of course, is when you're the source of stress in the relationship, just or they're stressing you. There might be your drinking, might be your temper, might be, your lack of trustworthiness or whatever like this. And sometimes we're not very insightful as to what might be stressing out our partner, but it's always good to actually ask yourself another good question along with what's the major source of stress in your life, is to ask yourself seriously, what am I like to live with?
Yeah.
And that can often dump a litre or two of chilly cold water into the base of your stomach when you start to really think, what am I like to live with? Oh dear, my wife needs a sainthood. But anyhow, another thing about stress, it's cumulative. It's cumulative. The stress that rocks relationships might not be a big thing.
Yeah.
It might just be a whole series of little things. I don't know if you've ever done one of those stress score charts. Have you ever done one of those where you score different things?
No,
A
too
parking
stressful.
ticket might be what's that?
Too stressful, John. I don't think I could cope. I find denial is my stress reduction strategy, which probably annoys my wife. But there we go.
There you go. Well, I hope it works for you at least a little bit. But a whole lot of little things add up in your life, and it might be, some setbacks at work. It might be children's health. It might be some parking tickets. It might be planning for a holiday.
Mm-hmm.
Even good things can be stressful. Getting a promotion at work, wow, that could be great, but with it comes stress.
Yeah.
Moving into a new house, fantastic. This is the house we always dreamed of, and the stress goes through the roof. It's good stuff, but it's stressful. So just think of all the stuff that perhaps is adding up, and also realize that big things do take a time to get over.
Yeah.
Your grandma might have died, and it was right back last year, but it's still something you're processing and churning through.
Yeah.
And so just be aware that these things do take a while to clear from your system, and that little things pile on top of little things. I can remember coming through a particularly stressful time at a place that I was working at, and I was thinking, wow, I've just got through that. And as I was going out to the car park to get into the car, someone chased after me and said, "There's a phone call for you."
Wow.
And I looked at them, locked my door of the car, raced off and went to bed. It was just that straw that broke the camel's back. Just a little thing of one more phone call.
Yeah.
I couldn't handle it. This was pre-cell phone where the caller can chase you.
They couldn't follow you. Now, a question on this one is, so what do we do if we're in a marriage relationship in particular, if we're not stressed? Because it's easy, I suppose, to go, well, I'm the calm one. I'm the one who obviously doesn't have a problem. They're the one that has a problem. They just need to cheer up. I tell you what, if I'm really cheerful and make lots of compliments, then they'll catch up with me. How do we treat things? How do we tread carefully, I suppose, when it is our partner who's stressed? How do we encourage them to, well, not just to be like us,
right.
To
one of the things is choosing your response, Andrew, because stress does push couples apart. It breaks marriages apart.
Yeah.
But you may not choose the stress that's coming down on you, but you can choose which direction it's going to push you. Is this going to push us together, or is it going to push us apart?
Yeah.
I mean, Naomi and I have had stress in our lives, and very often it's actually pushed us closer together as we've tackled it together. So let's make a conscious decision as the stress comes upon us, even if it's stress that I can see my partner has, not necessarily me. This is going to push us together.
Because it's easy to go, oh gosh, that's their problem. But if they've got a problem and you're not alongside for the ride, it becomes your problem pretty quickly, right?
It does. And even a worse response to that is you think you've got stress, and then you start to do a stress duet and show yourself. Sometimes when you're hearing of the things that are going down in your partner's world and everything, you might like to think, I've got a few things going on at the moment. I'll just sit on them for a little bit and let's just cope with this.
one thing at a time. Yeah.
Did I just say, I sometimes have had colds and flu. And one of the things I really, really like then is a bit of sympathy.
Yeah.
A bit of, oh, you poor dear, it looks like you really are going to die, that type of thing. As a man with a cold, you know how it is.
Exactly.
My wife's had a lung transplant. Do you know how miserable it is for a bloke having a cold when his wife's had a lung transplant, nearly died? How much sympathy do you think I'm going to get? It's just not fair. It ain't fair. But anyhow, choosing your response, choosing to have it pushed together, to realize that, hey, this too shall pass. That's always a good thing. It's not something you say to each other, or that thing. If they're can sound a little bit like, well, get over it.
Yeah.
But you don't want to say that. But just have in the back of your mind, we'll get through this. And then a couple of things you can do. One of them is just actually doing things, anything. One of the tendencies with stress is it makes you sedentary, drawing into the couch and just eating too much and maybe pouring a little bit too much into your glass and things like this. those things don't work. Do think about the things that don't tend to work, and slumping, eating too much, comfort spending, all those sorts of things. You just realize, no, we're not going to do those, but we do know things that do work for us, and that will be individual. It might be getting a break. It might be, going for walks on the beach. It might be having a quiet night at home, putting music on rather than just staring at your devices.
Yeah.
It might be bringing someone in to help. It might be taking your problems off to a pastor, a counselor, someone who cares. There will be things that do work, and them. People do tend to know, yes, this will probably work. It's just that inertia that comes with the stress, what comes with the depression, that realization of, I do have to do something about this, but I don't want to. That's where being in a couple relationship can really help. You can actually help each other. So, look out for each other, watch for signs and stress in each other. And if things are getting niggly and a bit stinky in your relationship, do think of that thing. What is the biggest stress in our relationship? Is there something we can do to fix the stress? No? Okay, let's do a stress resilience strategy with this.
Yeah.
Build those things into our relationship that help us handle stress. And that can be fun, pleasure, time together, this too shall pass.
Exactly. And hey, whatever it is you're facing, I suppose facing it together with is the best humour that you can manage, encouraging and supporting each other through that process. John, thank you so much for your wisdom. As always, thanks so much for joining us on the program.
You're very welcome. Cheers.
Hey, thanks very much for joining us in the Rhema studio. Thanks very much for watching the interview. It's kind of nice to have an audience, actually. And if you did like what you watched, then do give us a like, do give us the thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more interviews like that one, or perhaps even better, subscribe and those interviews will come straight to you. Don't forget to turn on your notifications, and we'll see you in the next one. Cheers.